Hi, today's presentation is going to focus on the future of cybersecurity. I'm going to predict some trends and transformation, largely four of them. So we know that with evolving threats, we also need to evolve the cybersecurity. But my today's presentation is going to be mix of certain trends that I see and prediction for the next 4 to 5 years, along with certain nation state theories that I believe will happen. So let's get started. So the first is that most corporates and organizations will move towards password-led authentication, and this will become a new normal. We all know that we have tens of application and we have to remember tens of credentials. And what we do is that we keep rotating similar set of passwords between one application to another. And there is a reason that we tend to forget the passwords. And if you have to remember, we keep rotating the passwords. Once any password is detected in any of the breach, then there is a possibility that password compromise will happen. Now, to circumvent that, almost all the organizations and popular sites force multi-factor authentication, which means that you either need an OTP or you need some sort of code or you need an authentication token. While OTP is good, but it brings a lot of user inconvenience. So what organizations will do is that they will move completely towards passwordless authentication. It's very common and we have already started to see. For example, when we register a mobile app specifically for banking, we see that our device gets registered and our biometrics get enforced. And once we enable biometric authentication, it means that we don't have to type in username and password every time on our mobile app. We open the mobile banking app and just press our finger and then we are in. This is a classic example which brings a lot of user convenience and reduces the support costs which are related to the password resets and forget passwords. While you can say that the email or SMS code or say biometric or authenticator apps are already there for multi-factor authentication, but the concept is that you don't remember a username and password. So they will not be used as a primarily for multi-factor, but as the only authentication. And how this will happen is that they will either authenticate the device with a certificate or they will register your laptop or endpoint or from virtual system you are accessing. It might be even a browser, which is verifying the identity of your system through either a certificate or a device registration, which is to happen one time. And then either you will get a magic link or you will just press your biometric, can be even your eyes and retina scans, and then you will be in. So let's move to the next one. The next one is that we know there are three pillars of cybersecurity controls. We talk about preventive, detective, and recovery controls. Of course, you can subdivide it further. But for the decades, we were investing a lot of money on preventive controls. So preventive controls might include multi-factor authentication, access management, firewalls, intrusion prevention system, anti-malwares, web application firewalls, so on and so forth. So a lot of money was going into preventive controls. And then a trend came where we were implementing a lot of controls on the detective side. So having the next generation security operations center, proactive threat hunting, EDR, the rise of SOAR tools for automation, user entity behavior analytics, they are all an example of detective controls. Then, since last few years, when we have kind of established that doesn't matter how strong our preventive and detective controls are, we are still susceptible to either insider threats or ransomware attacks or data leakages because security keeps getting porous and attackers keep bypassing these controls, including the regulators and the organizations have started to focus on recovery controls. Now, recovery controls were also there for quite some time. We used to take backup with a 3-to-1 methodology. We were focusing on business continuity management and disaster recovery. But with the rise of ransomware attacks infecting both the data centers as well as disaster recovery sites, which are either configured in active mode, there is a need for different sorts of technology. Hence, they evolved and we started to see immutable backups. We started to see snapshotting technologies and near DRs as well as far side capabilities to build the disaster recovery centers. So, where is this moving? Organizations will be continuing to put more money on the resilience capabilities. So, along with disaster recovery planning, business continuity strategies, there will be more adaptive response mechanisms. When we say adaptive response mechanisms, I mean to say there are two broad themes that are emerging. One is creation of this isolated recovery environment, wherein when you are taking the backup of all your critical systems, applications, Active Directory, security tools, you are using those backups and keeping one copy of the backup on a daily basis via air gap network to a vault. And this vault is going to scan all of your backups for any malwares using machine learning and AI. And once it is considered as a clean copy, the backup moves to the clean room where you keep building the systems. So you can say that it is kind of a mini data center, which is isolated from DC and DR. It is air gapped. It opens only for a very, very small time. There is only one way traffic, either through firewall or data diode. And then they are all immutable backups getting scanned and a clean copy is being declared. Then you are putting up a mini data center. This mini data center has all the security tools and the firewall configurations with alternate links so that in case of ransomware attacks, when both DC and DR are down, you will be able to switch to this isolated recovery environment, clean rooms, and run your operations within few hours. Of course, there are challenges in terms of processes, in terms of managing. Still, the data might be 24-hour old, but it is one of the best bet against the ransomware kind of attacks, which infect both the DC and DR. Now, if you are a fintech company or a completely cloud native, life is relatively easy as far as resilience is concerned. You can build cloud-based systems to take virtual machine snapshots. You can keep it in vault. You can redeploy the applications and also recover the data much more faster because there are technologies for snapshotting the virtual machines and not physical machines. And on the cloud, you have much more adaptability rather than if you are on the data center of your own, because the data centers might have AS400s and mainframes. Some of the banks still use them, which are not easy to keep spare in your clean rooms. And the second is that there will be much more investment that will go now into building organization resilience rather than preventive and detective controls. The third shift is that we will shift from confidentiality to integrity. We all were worried earlier about data confidentiality, and data confidentiality became extremely, extremely strong with unauthorized access prevention, data encryption, access control mechanisms, database activity monitoring, tools like encryptions and DLP, which were largely focused on confidentiality and not having any accidental data leakage. From confidentiality, a little bit move towards availability, which is one in OT. But another thing is that in case of ransomware attack, when we talk about double extortion, we are talking about not having access to information. So availability of information became an issue. While this information is of no use to an attacker, but it brings reputational risk as well as class action suits and other regulatory penalties if attacker leaks this data. Hence, we were worried about the availability of the information. And you need information for your systems to run. Now, what's happening is that with data manipulation things coming up like deepfake, misinformation against corporates, the need to have trust in the data and specifically of critical systems becomes important. Can you really trust your data? Now, shift will be to data integrity to identify these deepfakes, to identify uh, use of technologies like blockchain and also increasing regulatory requirements for data integrity, that there will be some money which will be used in identifying the authenticity and accuracy of the data. My fourth and last prediction is that the data sovereignty and the internet fragmentation is going to create a lot of trouble. And I will explain what the thought process is. Uh, as we move, we are hearing that almost all countries are moving towards data localization, which means that even if you are a multinational bank or you are a multinational corporation or you're a very big internet giant, you have to keep the country's data in a local country. Now, this becomes extremely difficult because technology is meant to create a scale and you can use the same application and algorithms working across the world. But if you have to keep on going to each country and then keep data there, you are creating a lot of silos of this fragmentation of digital infrastructure. So, what will happen is that you will create multiple national as well as regional silos. And this is not very seamless interconnected network. And I will explain again a little bit more in detail. So the tension will be with country sovereignty versus the interoperability. Now, what happens is that you take an example of, say, simple WhatsApp. Now, WhatsApp is a global firm from Meta. We use that to regularly chat and share and do voice calls, share data, etc. And then there are businesses that can happen through WhatsApp business. Now, if countries force that the servers have to be kept locally and we should be having the capability to break the encryption or keys, which means that at some point your encryption is not end to end, but it is getting broken at a through system accounts through one place. So what you are doing is that you are actually not transferring the data end to end in a secure manner, but it is getting decrypted at one place from whichever country of origin it might be. Now, this creates issues with the multinational companies and banks who want to do cross-border data transfer. They do not want this data to be decrypted in any of the gateways in any of the countries. Otherwise, the end-to-end encryption really has got no meaning. So what will happen to transactions that you do on an international level? I can be sitting in India and do a transaction to my US account. Is somebody saying that you want to get access to some of the encryption algorithms? Right now, no, but in future, even that might come. So when we talk about cross-border data transfers, we are talking about challenges. Then we need to think more about this international cooperation and global commerce facilitation rather than focus on the security. But from national sovereignty, if you see, they want data localization, they want control over the data flow. National security becomes a priority, which means that every kind of data, every kind of transaction, every information that is being shared, government want to have some control over it. And hence, we have seen that a lot of end-to-end encryption solutions like VPN solutions or proton mail kind of solutions have decided to quit the country and then move elsewhere. But if every country starts to do that, then we are also challenging the security. So there is less balance between data sovereignty and the security or the interoperability. The last but not the least, this will obviously create a lot of challenge for a fragmented internet. One is the privacy concerns. On one side, if we want localized controls, which means that we want more surveillance, which means less privacy. So it will impact the individual privacy rights because somebody has the capability to see what I am doing, be it chat, be it voice, be it transactions, be it business. It will also bring more cyber threats because the attack surface will increase. And we are not talking about end-to-end encryption. So there are places where we are breaking up. And then rogue actors may exploit this fragmentation and create more powerful attacks. Third is that it will have a reduced cooperation because when you break the internet, you bring certain vulnerabilities, you bring cross-border uh, issues with respect to security. And then you need a lot of cooperation between multiple countries really to see that how do you gel this piece together. And there will be a lot of disinformation and it will be extremely difficult to control because the isolated false informations will become more difficult to regulate. And you can think of it as Facebooks or Twitters, which are global platforms, but having servers in country, be it India, Indonesia, Malaysia, so on and so forth. And then there is a lot of local information that floats. And then the algorithms that are working, they are global in nature. They need to be customized to understand the languages as well as to understand which are disinformations, which are bot-based informations, and which are misinformation, which are being circulated forcibly to really bring it down. And there will be way less cooperation between countries, and then there will be a lot more disinformation using this global platform. So what will happen is that the future will be more divided internet landscape. It will have a complex challenges with respect to security, misinformation, and international cooperation. With that, I will end my presentation. Do let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also press the bell icon to stay notified of all the future released videos. See you in the next one. Thank you.